If you don't, I'm an online entrepreneur and an attorney. I'm kind of the person who created Your Online Genius. I help other online entrepreneurs get their legal protection in place, but also more generally set up kind of the basic foundations of the things they need to do in their business. And today, I wanted to come and talk to you about something that's actually pretty important in my view, and that is why pretty doesn't matter. And this is something that I find holds a lot of entrepreneurs back. They end up not taking action because they're so worried about whether something is pretty. And so as a result, they do nothing. And so I want to talk about that today and try to help you get over that block if that's something that stops you. So that's what today's live is about. We're going to be talking about that issue, and I'm going to give some examples and share some wisdom I've gotten from a lot of gurus in the space who will tell you the same thing. Now, again, today we're talking about why pretty doesn't matter, and I want to be very clear. I'm not saying make stuff ugly. That's not what I'm proposing to you. What I'm proposing is that, quite honestly, a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck in perfectionism. And so because they're stuck in perfectionism, they use like the lack of perfection as a reason not to take action. That's where this becomes a problem. And I see it a lot on the issue of whether things are pretty enough. And quite honestly, the biggest place I see it is where I am right now, doing video, and especially live video for Facebook, for Instagram, for all of the different social media platforms. I hear people constantly talking about this and explaining that they need to create a backdrop and they need to do this and they need to do that. So again, look, I've got a backdrop, right? I mean, it's a piece of furniture that I have along with, two pieces of art and some basic stuff other than that. That's all I've got. I don't have anything else. I did put some thought into it because, for example, with my light, I didn't want to put a piece of glass back there because if you put a piece of glass back there, you get bad glare. But beyond that, I didn't worry about it too much. And the reason why is because I know that at the end of the day, what you care about is not what's behind me. What you care about is the message that I'm sharing with you. What you care about is that I provide value and information you can use. Now, again, I'm not saying make it ugly, make it distracting, have a bunch of crap behind you. That's not a good plan. But you don't have to have some beautiful, perfect backdrop for your video. And this is something that I actually talk to a lot of people about in a lot of groups I'm in. I see people who focus on this. And part of it is some of the more advanced, online entrepreneurs who are making multiple millions of dollars a year have taken the time to build very professional looking sets and backdrops and those things for their videos. And that makes sense, right? I mean, they're at a point where it makes sense for them to do that. And the problem, however, is that a lot of people end up thinking, I have to do the exact same thing. I can't launch until I've got that beautiful backdrop. I can't go live until I've got that. And that's just wrong. So I want to share this. This isn't coming just from me. I want to be very clear that this is coming from experts in the space. One of them is my friend Tiffany. You know her as Coach Glitter, probably. I'm in a mastermind with her, and I've talked to her about this a lot. And she said, pretty doesn't matter when it comes to this. She said, actually, for the most part, these days with video, what people really want is authenticity. So if you have a perfectly curated space that just looks like, you spent millions of dollars on it, that actually may hurt you in the long run. Because at the end of the day, what people really want is to connect with you as someone like them. Now, again, she would tell you, don't be ugly, don't, make stuff distracting. But the bigger point is just start doing it instead of worrying about it being pretty. And again, this is coming from someone who teaches live video for a living. Now, obviously, she's going to have a pretty backdrop. She's going to have things staged because she teaches live video, right? So someone who teaches live video, you would expect to have that. But again, and over time, you can always improve your set. But the biggest thing I want to get across to you is that you can't let a fear or a thought of, hey, my backdrop isn't perfect, or, my setup isn't perfect, stop you from just getting on and creating content and offering value for your crowd. That really is the bigger, more important thing for you to do. And in my case, I can tell you, for example, I don't love my backdrop, right? You can't really see the way things are set up, but my desk is against one wall in my home office, and then the backdrop is against the other wall. That's really not ideal. I mean, ideally the desk would be, kind of closer to the back wall and we could do these other things, but here's the honest truth. This is my office, not my recording studio. I don't have a dedicated recording studio. I live in Washington, D.C., in the city. We don't have a house with like 5 extra bedrooms where I can, set up one just as a separate recording studio. And so as a result, I say, okay, well, I'm going to use my office, and this is good enough. And quite honestly, I've never had someone comment on any one of my videos, oh, hey, that's not good enough, pretty enough, so I'm not going to watch it. Or, hey, you really need to work on your background. Actually, I get a lot of good comments. People love those guitars. And it says something about my personality that, to me, even though I'm a lawyer, I mean, guitars are more a semblance of me as a person than a lot of other things I could have up there. So, I use this and talk about video because I hear this coming up all the time. But it's not just about video that I'm talking about. I'm going to now shift, and I want to talk about emails. And a lot of people first starting out, when they want to do an email, they want to put a pretty template on their emails that they send to their list. You shouldn't do that. In that case, it's actually counterproductive. What almost every person who sends email regularly will tell you is you want your email to look like any other email the person is getting. And what does that mean? I don't know about you, but when I send an email on my business or to a friend or something like that, I don't put any pretty backgrounds. I don't put any pretty templates. I just send an email, and it's on a white background, black text, and that's it. So in your emailing, that's what you should be doing. Don't try to make it pretty. If you try to make it pretty, you're actually being counterproductive. You're telling people, ooh, hey, this is a marketing email. And then they may say, oh, I'm not going to read it then. So that's another place where you don't need to be pretty. Really don't do it. Just go with simple, easy, white, background, black text, and send those emails out. But, it really could come a lot of other places. Like I know for a long time, I'm going to use an example of a website. And this was for my law firm, not for my online business, but it's a good example, right? So I had a law firm website that was just horrible at first, literally horrible. Didn't do anything useful. It was it was one of those things where you would think of as a billboard and had no other functionality. And so I decided to redesign it, to add functionality to it, to add things like people could sign up for my list and all these other things. And I started doing it. And again, I shouldn't have been doing it myself, but I was. But I got hung up on making it really pretty. And in this case, pretty was often, finalizing last little tweaks. And it was like, oh, well, I got to change this still, and I got to change that. The funny thing was, even before I did that, the new website I had in draft on a staging site was so much better than what I already had. But I didn't take action. I ended up sitting on it for like 8 months because I got busy. And so I lost 8 months of having a much better product because I was fixated on the perfectionism of having it be pretty. Again, mistake. If you do that in your online business, that's an even bigger problem. Like I will hear people talk about how it takes them a year to get a website up. There's no excuse for that. You need a website. You need to get it up. It doesn't have to be a work of art. It needs to be functional. It needs to have a place for people to get content. Needs to be a place where people can sign up for your email list, but you just need it to be functional to start, and you can always improve it. Make it pretty later. Again, I'm not saying make it ugly. It can't be so ugly that it looks like a kindergartner did it. That's not going to work well. But as long as you start with good enough, you will be fine. Waiting is the problem. And again, I see this also come up in the place where people will spend a lot of time trying to make their logo, like the wording of their logo, really fancy and pretty. And sometimes I have to tell them, I can't even read that. And again, this is a place where, quite honestly, clarity is much more important than being pretty. You need people to understand what you say. And so that's what you need to be focused on. But again, the bigger lesson here isn't really about whether it's pretty or not. Pretty is fine. I'm not against pretty. And in some sense, people really do want to do pretty. And I'm not against that. I'm a guy, so I tend not to care about flowery stuff and things like that. But pretty cannot be the reason that you don't act. And that's what it normally is. So pretty is often an excuse for perfectionism. And, you need to do that. And so someone just asked a question, does organized and pretty not coincide with one another? Not necessarily. To be pretty, you need to be organized. But being organized and being pretty aren't the same. And as long as you're organized, you're good. So with your website, it should be organized. With your backdrop, it should be organized. You should definitely meet that. My point is, don't worry about getting it to some next level where you're like, I need this to be a beautiful whatever, a beautiful website, a beautiful backdrop, whatever. That's when the problem comes up, because it becomes an excuse to not act, to not take action, to stay where you are rather than moving forward. And you will never, ever actually have the business you want, have the freedom you want, have the life you want until you start taking action. And so that's why I say don't worry about pretty, because it becomes this crutch to not take action. And so that's the problem. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. And it kind of ties in with my podcast that's coming out tomorrow. Tomorrow's podcast is all about how you can move mountains in your business if you will start taking massive action. Basically, stop thinking, start acting. So that's what tomorrow's episode's about. And it's kind of related to this whole thing of, you need to be moving forward. It's the same concept of, progress, not perfection. All of these things are kind of a constant problem that a lot of entrepreneurs have about not actually making progress. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what you need to do is take action. So at the end of the day today, I need to have moved my business forward. At the end of the day tomorrow, I need to have moved it forward some more. And so as long as you're doing that and constantly taking action and moving forward and actually doing stuff, not just learning stuff, you'll be much better off. So that's kind of the nugget of wisdom here in the don't be pretty. And I thought about it and wanted to talk about it because tomorrow's podcast episode is really, kind of diving deeper into this about how you need to take massive action and stop thinking. So that's all I've got today. If you're someone who struggles with this, if you want to make sure you see the podcast, get the podcast, etc., you can join my free online community, the Online Genius Community. It's a free Facebook group. In there, I always post my podcast. I go in there and talk about my podcast, but also all of these videos I'm doing live on the page. Go into the group, so you'll see them there. It's also a chance for you to ask me questions about the legal stuff, about marketing issues, about other things. And it's a group approaching 3,000 like-minded online entrepreneurs who are trying to build their businesses the right way. So sometimes I don't answer because there's a lot of other people in there who can answer your question even better than I could. So it's a great resource, and I'd love for you to join me. It's absolutely free. You go to youronlinegenius.com/community. Again, youronlinegenius.com/community. You go there and you can join the group absolutely free. So I hope you're ready to take some massive action this week. I've got a ton of stuff on my plate, so I'm going to head out and get off this live, and you should do the same and go back to kind of building your business and moving the big rocks that you've got for the week. I'll talk to you later.